Hello and welcome to Pass Forward, in which we do a deep dive into issues shaping contemporary India. In this edition, we're going to be discussing Prime Minister Modi's recent announcement that the next 25 years of India's independence will be Kartavya Kaal, the era of duty. This was a very Kennedy-esque ask of the nation. It's odd that the duty reminder from Modi keeps coming up at a time when all the din is about the shrinking of civil rights in India. Modi's speeches are rife with references to how rights are embedded in duties. During his 2023 Independence Day speech, Modi emphasized duty 4 times in a single breath. It is the duty of all of us, the duty of every citizen, and this era. Amrit Kaal is Kartavya Kaal, an era of duty, he declared. He also brought duties up during his last speech in the famed Central Hall of the old Parliament building. The emphasis on duties over rights underscores his vision for India. Even the national capital's iconic Rajpath, the boulevard leading up to the Rashtrapati Bhavan, has been renamed Kartavya Path, the path of duty. But this kernel was planted in the Indian psyche by former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi during the emergency, a time when the state was accused of overriding citizens' rights. My colleague Humra will tell you more about the amendment that changed everything, the 42nd Amendment.
The 42nd Amendment, introduced in 1976, is mostly remembered for amending the preamble's description of India from a sovereign democratic republic to a sovereign socialist secular democratic republic. What's lesser known is that it's also amended dozens of other articles and added 14 new ones, including perhaps its most prescient addition, that of the fundamental duties. Fundamental duties are the moral obligations that all citizens of India have towards the state. The 42nd Amendment listed 10 such duties and 11th was added in 2002. They are not enforceable by law, and therein lies the rub. It is up to the individual in question to not just perform their duty to the state, but also define the scope of their duties. The emergency ended, Indira Gandhi lost the election, and a new government came to power in 1977. And most of the 42nd Amendment was undone by the 44th Amendment and the subsequent Minerva Mills judgment. But the duties have stayed enshrined in the Constitution. And subsequent governments, like the Modi government, have doubled down on them. Some, like legal scholar Pendra Bakshi, argue that the fundamental duties are now part of the basic structure of the Constitution. The recent obsession with fundamental duties is a paradigm shift, which is what makes the current dispensation so similar to the emergency era. And its purpose was to erect a mask over violations of citizens' rights, according to Vineet Krishna, lead associate editor at the Center for Law and Policy Research. My colleague Raghav Bikhchandani will tell you more about how the amendment was introduced.
Long before Indira Gandhi and the emergency, it was another Gandhi, the nation's father, Mahatma Gandhi, who gave us a template for citizenhood. And this template hinged on duties and not rights. The 42nd Amendment was introduced to legitimize a political executive during the emergency, according to legal scholars. It was rushed through Parliament in an arguably undemocratic way, as Mrs. Gandhi was at the height of her power during this time, and most opposition leaders were behind bars. But the 42nd Amendment was by far the most comprehensive amendment to the Constitution. It amended the preamble and 40 articles, the 7th schedule, and added 14 new articles to the Constitution. It is also notable that the duties have not been repealed by any government that followed. The fundamental duties have stood the test of time and are now an unalterable part of India's legal fabric, part of the Constitution's basic structure. It is only when certain rights are guaranteed that duties can be performed and vice versa. It was this understanding that had been shaped into material form in 1976. So it isn't surprising that it has come back now in the 21st century, marking the Kartavya Kaal. Listen to Tarun Khaitan, Professor Chair of Public Law at the LSE Law School, on the parallels between 1976 and 2023.
We should be clear, right, that the politics of the 1970s did not pose a fundamental challenge to the dominance of the Congress party. Right? Mm-hmm. Although, yes, other parties were emerging, they were becoming stronger, they were winning state-level elections, but there was no threat to the one-party system as yet for the party. Right? So the need to change the Constitution was not to protect the party's dominance in politics. It was to protect a particular individual, which was Indira Gandhi. So, and there, I think, there's a slight difference in today's scenario where a lot of the engine room changes that the BJP is seeking is primarily geared towards party protection. not not protecting the party's existence, because the BJP is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. What these amendments are seeking to defend are the BJP's dominance and keeping India as a dominant party system through the constitution. So that's one distinction between the two. But there is an important continuity. That whether you want to protect an individual's dominance or a party's dominance, the main important continuity is that the tenor of both amendments is anti-institutional. Right? Um, what the 42nd Amendment was premised on, the idea of Indira's India, right? And even today, sort of the BJP, the equation of the prime minister with the party, with the nation, with the country, right? They all see democratic institutions, whether they are courts, whether they're independent institutions like electoral commissions, whether they are bureaucracy and police and acting impartially, following the rule of law. These are all impediments to concentrated dominant power, whether of the individual or the party. And they're both hostile to an institutionalist framework. And I think that is the key commonality between the two amendments.
Here's what happened with the 42nd Amendment in 1976. The Swaran Singh Committee was set up by Gandhi in 1976 to make recommendations on fundamental duties, but not even one of the 12 members was a legal scholar. Their report did not go down well with jurists. Others also warned of the impact of the proposed amendments, like lawyer Nani Palkhiwala, who wrote that the committee's report on the amendments will in reality change the basic structure of our constitution. After the emergency, the amendment took center stage. What was going to happen to it? The Morarji Desai government that came to power in 1977 undid most of the 42nd Amendment with the 44th Amendment, and the landmark 1980 Minerva Mills judgment also struck down other parts. But despite all these changes, the fundamental duties remained.
The balance between fundamental rights and fundamental duties hangs precariously on what and who defines the duties an Indian citizen has towards the Indian state. Today, the invocation of fundamental duties has a far more sinister intention that goes beyond just constitutional complexities. The idea of India as enshrined in the Constitution and by the Constituent Assembly has been dismissed as elitist and out of touch. The idea of the Indian state and therefore the Indian citizen has been in constant flux since then. One needs to look no further than the debates around the Citizenship Amendment Act and the National Register of Citizens for proof. Prime Minister Modi himself thinks duties and rights are complementary to each other. That rights and duties get spoken of together is itself a mistake, he said in a speech in January 2020. It implies that rights are one system and duties are another system. It is not like that. Everybody's rights are embedded in our duties. Mahatma Gandhi used to say, मूलभूत अधिकार नहीं होते हैं, मूलभूत तो कर्तव्य होते हैं. Rights are not fundamental, it is a duty that is fundamental. But this argument is a shot in the dark without constitutional literacy, according to legal experts like Bakshi. At a time when India is brimming with its own potential and simultaneously turning inwards and redefining what it means to count as an Indian citizen while stepping onto the global stage, enforcing duties without honoring the rest of the constitution could lead to a dangerous concoction of nationalism and moral censorship.
So look, there's a question of what my views are as a matter of political philosophy and what my views are as a matter of constitutional law. I still am waiting to see what constitutional work fundamental duties actually do in a constitutional text, right? Apart from sort of symbolic expressive work. As a matter of political theory, do I believe that citizens have fundamental duties? Of course I do. I think, we have duties to pay legitimate taxes. We have the duties to abide by the legitimate laws of the country we live in, especially criminal laws. We have duties to respect our fellow compatriots and perhaps come to their aid. We have duties of solidarity, duties of friendship to our fellow nationals, right? So as a matter of political theory, absolutely, right? But whether these duties are best effectuated through a constitutional list of fundamental duties or not, I'm not sure. We certainly need laws, like the law that requires us to pay our taxes. And the idea of progressive taxation is based on solidarity, right? That we pay more if we can afford to pay more for our fellow citizens, right? Same with criminal laws, right? So absolutely. And defend the legitimate right of every citizen to be counted as an equal and free citizen of India. That's a duty that we all have. But I genuinely don't have a view on what it means to have that as a fundamental duty.
That makes sense. Like the biggest criticism I've heard from any experts so far is that, especially in the Indira Gandhi context, was that duties are like put in place mainly to, like, I guess, as a pretext to like curb on citizens' freedoms or something. So I guess that's maybe like a more civil libertarian sort of interpretation of those issues.
That would be sinister. If the duties, if abiding by the duties becomes a precondition to accessing constitutional rights, that would be wholly sinister, illiberal, and anti-constitutional. And in fact, we only today have read news stories about the Supreme Court demanding a petitioner to take an oath of allegiance to the Constitution as a precondition to hearing his complaint. And I think that's appalling. I think that's wrong and constitutionally unsustainable.
Thank you for watching this edition of Pass Forward, and please read our article to know more about the conversation around fundamental duties in India today.